All right. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to see you all here. This is my second time doing this workshop because I forgot to hit record last time. So we are recording now. And this workshop will go out live to anyone who is here or who signed up. And just wanted to kind of go over some important things before we get started. This is recorded and will be uploaded to various social media platforms probably sometime in the future. So if you want to remain anonymous, just keep your camera off and you can change your name in Zoom. And if you need assistance with changing your name, just let me know and I can do it on my end for you. Um, and if you're okay with your name showing up, then you can keep it as is. I do really love when you guys participate in the conversation. So your name will kind of pop up if you're talking. Um, and just remember, this workshop is really educational purposes only. I am a therapist, but I am not your therapist. And if you are a client here, still what I say here may or may not apply to you. It's really a case by case basis. So, general suggestions, advice, all that is just that. It's general and it may or may not apply to you. So, lastly, throughout the presentation, I'll ask you to write in the chat kind of an answer to a question. And just remember that it's completely optional. So even though I'm saying, please do this thing, it's not a demand. It's not a requirement. It is just, it's a request and you're allowed to say no. So please have a pen and paper ready with you, because even if you don't want to write in the chat, writing on paper can be really helpful for yourself. And I think that's it. Make sure too that you're feeling comfortable. If you need to get up, get water, just move around. I think when we're in workshops or on Zoom, we feel like we have to be, right here at the camera and paying full attention. You don't have to do that. You can sit on the floor, you can move around, you can be walking outside. That's a really important part of this, is just letting go of some of those societal rules where we feel like we're supposed to look and be a certain way and just be still. So without further ado, let's get started. So I'm Destiny. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I'm licensed in the states of Georgia and Florida. I have my own lived experience with chronic pain and illness, and definitely lots of anger. Anger is an emotion that's filled with things like danger signals and judgment and confusion, and power, right? Anger can be really powerful, both for good and bad. We'll get into some of that later on. And again, just remember to allow yourself, if you start to feel things coming up as we're talking about this, then that's really a good invitation for you to move, look away from the screen, do what your mind and body are asking you to do for comfort. So I would love for you to write in the chat if you are either a person living with chronic pain and illness, or B, you're here supporting someone with chronic pain and illness. And I will periodically pause throughout the presentation to give you all time. I'm so glad to see there's someone here supporting. Thank you for being here. Truly. Okay, so some truths about anger. I would love to know in the chat what you were taught about anger growing up. Sometimes it can be explicit, like you are explicitly told you are not allowed to be angry. And then other times, no one ever said that to you, but you maybe just got the sense that when you were angry, you were shut down very quickly, or somebody got angrier than you to make you stop being angry. So there can be a lot of things that you learned about anger, not just from your parents, but also from school. I think we really discount how much school impacts us, but you're there from 8 to 3 every 5 days a week for 12 years. So just keep that in mind. That's really pivotal in our learning experiences too. So some truths about anger include avoiding it makes it worse. A lot of us do avoid anger because anger is scary. But it's actually a really protective mechanism. And when we learn to pay attention and tune in, then we learn how to use it appropriately. So it can be terrifying, but it isn't inherently good or bad. And we can manage it and control it in a way that is good for us and helpful, and not suppressing it, because that's not helpful. So again, just let me know in the chat what you were taught about anger growing up. And I'm
I
gonna give you maybe a minute or so to think about that and write that in the chat. Yeah, definitely. Someone wrote society sent the message that anger is not great, and especially for certain social groups when it comes to certain stereotypes. Very true. So as we're talking about this, I also want to be cognizant that there are, if you are of a racial minority, then for you especially, anger was something that was shown to be just dangerous, very dangerous, depicted in the media and movies and all of that. So we want to be um, really cognizant of that as we're going through this. Like, it's not just, oh, I learned anger isn't good and I shouldn't do it. There's also some real ramifications that can threaten your life if you show anger. So again, like, this is just a reason why some of us suppress it down and don't show it, even though it's a really normal human emotion that we do need to be able to express. And learning how to express it, again, that can look different depending on who you are and what your life experiences are. And, might be okay for one person to show anger without some dire consequences and not okay for another person. So we want to be mindful of that. Okay. So with that said, this still applies to everyone because what we're going to talk about here is how we express our anger is going to look different for each of you, um, based on your own personal lived experiences and what is right for you. So we start by knowing our anger. Um, Anger is often really misunderstood again because we aren't allowed to express it. So we're not familiar with it. Like, we can't understand something that we just weren't familiar with. So let's get to know it a little bit. As we go through this presentation, I want you to just notice if anger even like tries to rise up. Notice what keeps it down. Sometimes we just like we intellectualize, which means we think about it instead of feel it, or we judge it. You might judge this presentation. You might judge yourself for thinking a certain thing. You might be judging. These are judgment, intellectualizing, even tears. Like this can hold anger down because again, anger isn't really usually safe for us to feel. So those are ways that our body tries to keep us safe from that. And I want you to notice, like, how do you feel about your anger? Okay, that's that judgment piece. But first, let's go to something called resourcing. It's a little similar to grounding. It can be the same thing as grounding too. But since danger is so difficult to explore, it's important that we first kind of have a sense of groundedness inside of us or around us. You sometimes, when we talk about groundedness and resourcing, we tend to talk about going like into your body and feeling a sense of calm or stability, but that's not always accessible to us. Sometimes, if you just look around your environment and you notice something in your environment that gives you something that you really love about your environment, maybe it's a certain painting or the way that you set your room up, or just the fact that you have four walls around you. These things, just realize, like, if you're having a hard time tapping into a feeling of safety, you might think about, like, what would it be like if I didn't have this home, these four walls around me? And that might help you kind of get into that feeling of like, okay, I do feel really safe here, and I feel good that I have these four walls around me. The reason we want to resource and find the positive experiences in our body or around us is because, again, anger is hard, and we're not trying to say, feel positive, don't feel negative. We're trying to say, this hard thing over here that we're about to explore, like, we need some foundation underneath us so that when we are experiencing this hard thing, we don't feel like we're just falling apart. there's something there to catch us. Um, Sometimes you can think about a loved one or someone who makes you feel really safe. So just take a couple minutes now, and I want you to think about, when was the last time you did something you were proud of? This might give you a sense of safety. These questions are on the screen. So I'll put a timer on and give you a couple minutes I would love for you to share it in the chat, but if not, then just write it down on your paper, pen and paper with you. So you can remember something that made you proud, or remember a time that you felt really loved or appreciated or valued. Or again, is there an object in your space that you can look at or hold that genuinely gives you a sense of comfort? All right. Okay. Yeah. So some things that came up for you all, some things that make you feel safe: stuffed animals, weighted blankets, yeah, comfort objects. And it just helps you feel a little bit like there's something tangible you can hold on to. So great. Thank you all for participating in that. So when we're thinking about knowing our anger, some of the ways that we can get to know it, you might hear your therapist say to you, you need to feel it or you need to sit with it. And you're like, what does that mean? I know I've been on that side of things asking that question. And I've had clients also say to me, like, I don't understand what this means. And this is what it looks like. It looks like feeling what anger feels like in your body. And sometimes, oftentimes, especially if you're not familiar with, if you're used to trying to suppress it, or if you're the type that explodes very easily and very quickly, you also might have a less of an understanding of what your anger like truly feels like, because you go from 0 to 100 and you aren't able to feel that, like, the rising anger that happens. You just go from I feel nothing to boom, it's all here. It's all out. And that's usually where we start to get into trouble with our anger. But when we slow down that process and we actually feel what it feels like in the in between, that's where we start to gain an intuition around our anger, and we can use our anger in a way that's going to help us, not hurt us. So what does it feel like? Does it feel like heat in your body? Does it feel bubbly or tight? Does it feel slouchy or loose? Really um understanding, like, what are the physical sensations that happen when I'm feeling angry. For me, it tends to be tightness as soon as I start noticing that there's tightness happening in in my body, there are other reasons why tightness might happen to, fatigue, um, things like that. And so the goal here is not to think whenever I'm tight, it means I'm angry, or, the more we pay attention to this by asking these questions, what does it feel like? What does it sound like? What does it look like? The question is really what's most powerful here. Asking yourself that question will help you build your intuition around your anger. So again, what does it sound like? Is it loud? Is it actually quiet? Like, is it more like whispers? You know, does it involve cussing? Does it involve passive aggressiveness? Um, and then what does it look like when it finally comes out? Do you stomp around? Do you yell? Do you hurt yourself or others? Does it feel restrictive, or does your breathing feel like short and shallow, restrictive, or expansive? Like you're breathing a lot, but it's too much and it's overwhelming. So just kind of, and you'll have all this in your workbook too. So as you're practicing this, remember this is a primer here. And then I hope that you'll be able to take the workbook and practice, because this really is about practicing. It's about learning what's in your body, not just knowing things in your head. So we want to go over, we want to understand what our triggers are. And those are not always as simple or as easy as just like, oh, someone yelled at me at work and like now I'm angry. That's a like easy example. There's also really small, um, small things that build up over the day or over the week or over the month that fill up our bucket, so to speak. Lorimer Moseley is a physiotherapist in Australia who does a lot of pain science research stuff. And so he has a concept called DIM versus SIM, danger in me and safety in me, is what those two acronyms stand for. And the danger in me just means like, what are the things that happen in my environment or in my body that make me feel like there is danger around me? And his concept is that we feel physical pain when our danger signals outweigh our safety signals. And if you can't figure out a way to increase your safety signals so much that it outweighs your danger signals, you're not a failure. There's nothing wrong with you. But this is a practice that we have to commit to over time, because there are so many obstacles to feeling safety in our world, in our environment. And it looks different for everyone. You and I might feel safe in two completely different environments. So it's about knowing yourself and knowing what feels safe to you. And then also realizing that we can't always get that. So how do we bring in other elements of safety when the thing that makes us feel most safe isn't available to us? So some things that fill up our danger bucket would be other unwanted emotions. So anger in and of itself is usually an unwanted emotion, but so is sadness, so is, rejection, so is anxiety, like all of these things that we don't want to feel. Lack of desired social interaction, things going wrong, anything from like the dishwasher broke to I lost my job. Both of those things fill up your bucket. Maybe not the same amount, but they do go into that bucket of danger. And it just keeps filling and filling and filling unless we know how to kind of let it out slowly, little by little. That's where this bullet point of micro moments comes in. Micro moments are the small things that are almost unnoticeable. But, the way your dog like lays his head on your lap, or the way that, the sun shines through the window, that doesn't override the physical pain you're feeling in your body or the bad thing that happened this morning, but it does fill up your safety bucket a little bit so that your danger bucket and your safety bucket, hopefully, either at least are even, or your safety signals can get higher and higher while your danger signals hopefully stay not so high. So a question for you to think about is, how full does my bucket get before I recognize that anger is there? Um, and also what else does your mind consider to be dangerous? You might write some of that in the chat. these are just examples here that I've listed on the slides, but you might have other ones that, or they might be on my slide, but things that, like, yeah, that thing there that really like filled my bucket up a lot. That's when I know I'm angry. For a lot of us, it's like being misunderstood or not having enough time in the day to finish a thing that was really important to us. Even feeling bored can fill up that bucket and make us feel angry. So think about for a moment, couple minutes, what it is that your body and your mind consider to be dangerous. And also think about how full does the bucket get before you recognize your anger. And I'll give you a couple minutes there. I- 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 Right. All right. Thank you all. So now that you have an understanding of a little bit of an understanding, don't get me wrong, this is a practice that takes time, but a little bit more of an understanding of what it is that fills up your bucket and how that feels in your body, we want to move on to step 2, which is moving your anger. And before we move it, we have to do all of that happened in step 1, which is feeling it, acknowledging it, labeling it, which is best done in safe spaces. So knowing that what makes you feel safe, both internally and externally, is always going to be an important process throughout the entire 4 steps here. So as we move our anger, we want to think about like what usually helps to calm our anger, not numb it. Sometimes numbing is actually, it's okay. It's important. It's the only thing that's going to get us like, out of that extreme feeling that we don't want to be feeling. But once we numb it and we kind of come down from that a little bit, make sure that we're going back into it. Because again, avoiding it only makes it worse. And this is how we build up and build up and build up over time. So think about what usually helps to calm your anger and what it means. You might even have to sit with, okay, I think I'm calming it, but maybe I'm actually numbing it. It's all about the reflection and asking yourself these questions. The questions that you ask are going to be the thing that help you the most, not the answer. It's the question. Right. So, and micro moments are the most impactful. These small moments throughout the day, they really build up. So think too, like, how does your anger feel when you're moving it versus when you're stuffing it down or exploding with it? Moving your anger, um, Well, let's go into exploding anger. Can anybody give me an example of what it looks like for you to explode with anger? For me, that usually looks like rage cleaning my house. And then I feel terrible after because I've overdone it and my body hurts. And but there's this rage cleaning that happens for me, and also yelling and stomping. That's what my anger looks like. So what does your anger look like when you are exploding with it? Rage cleaning, heavy ruminating and talking to myself. Good one. Yeah. That. Yep. And so I've written some options here of ways that you can move with your anger. These are really, this is just like such a small list. Again, it's really, it's about finding these things that really resonate with you and not just kind of doing what's on a list that somebody told you to do. Although if you have no idea where to start, that's what these lists are here for. So yeah, thank you. So I almost never explode with anger. I numb it and shut it down. That was kind of I was thinking about asking that question, but um, I want to know too, for those of you who numb and don't really explode, what does that look like? What does shut down look like for you? And what does numbing look like for you? And so if you're the type to kind of quickly move into explosive anger, your job is going to be learning how to slow that down a little bit. And if you're the type to shut it and numb it down, your job is going to be learning how to speed up a little bit. We want to kind of meet balance. Perfect balance is a myth. There's no such thing. And there's room for all of these things to happen in a healthy emotional regulation. But again, we're thinking about how does something impact me, which then impacts my life as a whole. Like how do I express this so that it feels uh, so that I'm familiar with my anger and it doesn't control my actions. I can actually use my anger to help me then do actions that I want to do. Right. And that leads us into using our anger. So you want to think about giving your anger a job based on what is important to you. Values work is something that most therapists know and love how to do. So if you are in therapy, this is a really good question for your therapist. How do I find out what my values are? What's important to me? Um, and values are not goals. That's a common thing that people mix up. It'll be like, oh, well, I have a value to um, like run a marathon or something. That's a goal oriented thing. Whereas a value is maybe just health. And so every single day you're doing something that moves the needle in your health, even if it doesn't get you a desired outcome. So if you really love running, but you can't, you might think about what is it about running that I love? Do I love being outside? Do I just love like moving my legs? What is the thing that I love about that? And then we engage in some of those behaviors, even if we can't do the actual art of running. Um, Remember too, throughout this, as we're exploring our anger, we want to be compassionate and kind to ourselves. That's a big thing that comes up is we'll feel the anger and we'll even be trying to do it. Maybe you leave this workshop and you're like, okay, I can see the benefit now in feeling my anger and moving through it. And then when you go to try to do that, there's going to be 100 things that try to shut your anger back down or to like keep you in the same pattern that you're used to doing. So if you're explosive or you numb, you're going to try to stay in that same kind of patterning. That's just that's how the neural pathways in our brains work. It wants the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance means the thing that you're most familiar with. So it's going to go there first, and that's why when we're doing this work, we have to expect that it's going to be hard. sometimes when we do workshops or workbooks, things like that, we read about it and it's like, oh, that sounds really easy. I can do this. So then when you go to try to do it and it's not easy, you feel even worse because you had this expectation that it was going to be easy. And it's not. It's going to be hard because, again, your brain is used to behaving in a certain way. So give yourself lots of grace and lots of compassion if you can't do it exactly as you thought you were going to be able to. Remember that we want to stay with our anger long enough to find this energy that I'm talking about that can then direct the energy to where we want to go. Okay, this practice requires intention and discipline and lots of compassion and flexibility with expectations. Okay, so I have this kind of just a play on this word of giving your anger a job. So we're now hiring for the following roles. Our anger can help us complete projects, passion projects, work projects, cleaning, creative projects. Our anger can help us create change, social change, personal kind of self-development, and then relational change and fueling personal growth. So breaking old habits and patterns and changing unhealthy habits. Again, we think about anger as this thing that's only destructive because we don't know it very well. So all we know is suppress, 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 and then we numb or we explode. And what we want to do is the first two steps that we've already talked about, getting to know your anger. And then we want to use what we've learned here and move with our anger to fuel the change that we really want to see in our life. Okay, so again, the required skills for this job is compassion, mindful awareness, coping and grounding skills, social support, and your SIM signals. That's the safety in me signals. So things like fun and accomplishment and rest. Someone said, I struggle directing the energy in a way that doesn't make my chronic pain worse. Yeah, like rage cleaning. I feel you on that. Um, so if you have a tendency to rage clean like me, one thing that I do is okay, so the first step is to label it. So once I'm stomping around the kitchen, I'm clanking dishes, I'm shutting cabinets really hard. That's my cue to say like, this is rage cleaning. So I label it, I pause for just a moment, I breathe, I have some compassion with myself, all of these skills we're talking about. The pausing and noticing is that mindful awareness piece. The pausing and the compassion and the skills that we're talking about here, that doesn't get rid of your anger. It doesn't mean, okay, do these things and now I'm going to be fine after that. No, this is not about fixing. It's about being with. So the slamming and all of those things, that oftentimes is a distraction from what's really, really happening in our body. So I might pause. And usually if I do that long enough, maybe the tears come. And crying when you live with chronic pain and illness is also exhausting. So that's another reason why we might not want to do it. Just like the physical exhaustion of it alone is enough to make us not want to. So keep that in mind. There are all these obstacles keeping us from feeling what it is that we want to feel. Yeah, crying often triggers my migraines. Definitely understand that. It is a reason why, it is a reason why it's hard to feel our feelings. Um, but a big part of what we're learning here, and I don't know if I've really verbalized this well enough yet, but we want to titrate slowly into these feelings. So, as I feel the anger rising and I notice myself walking to the kitchen or walking to the place that I'm about to rage clean, I might literally just slow down my steps. Or if you're the type that numbs everything and you are more likely to go to your room and lay down in bed for days on end, then you might quicken your pace up, even if it's to quicken to go to your bed. I know that might sound counterintuitive, but the goal here is just to start to break some of these patterns that we're doing so that our brain can be like, okay, we can do something different here. I haven't thought about how to do this before, but we're going to think about how to do something just slightly different. And once we start getting familiar with that habit, Then we can usually move into some of the like giving your anger a job. Like how do I use my anger to fuel a work project or to fuel like going out with friends and being like in a good headspace rather than an angry headspace, but my anger might actually help me get out of the house. That takes a lot of time to get there. And this is about practicing all these steps so that eventually we can give ourselves a job. And keeping in mind too, like the the feeling of accomplishment, like how the house looks after it's clean or after you've accomplished, after you've accomplished anything. Sometimes that is so it feels so good and it's like the only thing that has felt good all day that will reinforce this like pushing through the pain and hurting yourself in the process to get to that end goal. One thing I've really practiced a lot is like again, cleaning the kitchen, I just think is a really good example. Half of the dishes might be done, or I might have gotten all the dishes done in the sink, and then I look over and there's still a few things that need to be done on the countertops. If I'm noticing my pain is increasing, I'm gonna leave that for later. And that was something I was never able to do previously. It was like all or nothing. If I was cleaning the entire kitchen, sometimes even the entire house, even though I had no energy for that. So we're learning to listen to our body and allow our anger to be a part of the experience rather than letting it numb us mentally or physically so that, we kind of just, again, we're on autopilot and not a lot of mindful awareness there. Does anyone have any questions about that so far? Thoughts that you want to share? The fourth part of this is really it's not like a step four, like you do one, two, three, four in a row, but soothing your anger. This will happen throughout this entire process. So remember, we want to focus on comfort over numbing. A lot of times those two things collide and it's hard to know, am I comforting myself or am I numbing myself? You know, Scrolling on your phone is a good example. This usually can help us numb really, really easily. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can be in like the throes of a really difficult emotion. And if I just like go on Instagram and start scrolling and watching videos, it's like gone. Um, that is probably, if it goes away that quickly, that's probably an example of numbing. Sometimes though, I'll be angry or I'll be like feeling a certain thing and I'm also feeling really fatigued and I know I need to pause. I know I need to do something. So I intentionally bring out my phone and say, I'm going to allow myself. I just need like 10 minutes of scrolling. That can be more of there might be some numbing in that too still, but it's more of a comfort measure and there's like a boundary with it. I'm going to cut it off at this amount of time and then I'm going to go back to what I was doing. So that allows me to slow myself down before I speed back up again. When you think about taking care of your anger or soothing your anger, you want to think about it as if you were taking care of a cold. Um, Now, some of us just ignore cold symptoms and again, just like push through it. But I want you to think about maybe the flu is a better example. If you have the flu, there's nothing you can do. You are just on the couch or in your bed, like for days on end. Every part of you is just feeling awful. You can't think straight. You can't really do much. So if you have the flu, you would care for that by making sure you drink a lot of liquids. You would maybe like talk with a friend when you're feeling, like you can actually talk. That's kind of hard when you have the flu sometimes, but you want to do these things that are going to make you feel good and allow you to rest. Um, Rest doesn't always mean laying down and being in bed the way it would with the flu. So that's probably a different topic for another time, but just keep in mind for the purpose of what we're talking about here with soothing your anger, we want to care for it intentionally. Um, and we can use the 6 R's here to help us remember how to do that. And this is all in your workbook as well. So first step is to recognize that's what we talked about at the beginning of the workshop. We want to recognize the physical sensations, the emotions, even the meaning that we give to these things. Like when I'm tight in my body, that might mean oh no, like, we might have a thought that this means, oh no, I'm physically my pain is getting worse, or I've just damaged something, or I ruined something in my body. We can give a lot of meaning to things that actually, like the tightness might not mean that at all. So we want to just keep that in mind. We want to recognize the triggering situations. Like, what was it that filled up our bucket that led to this outburst here? Especially if you're the type to go from 0 to 100 really, really quickly. It's so hard sometimes to even know what made us angry. And we'll just kind of pick the last thing that happened, and then we'll say that all of our anger that we're experiencing right now is because of this one thing. It might be the thing your partner just said to you the moment before you kind of went into an outburst. And that might barely even be what it was that like filled your bucket up. It might just be the last thing that happened before your bucket overflowed. So we want to recognize, spend some time there, and we want to reflect. What is the benefit of this anger? There's always a benefit. Okay. So the benefit might be this anger shuts down another emotion that I don't want to feel. Or this anger makes my partner stop doing the thing that I'm really irritated by right now and is making me angry. Um, it might be this anger helps me feel justified in whatever it is that I want right now. So there's always a benefit, and we want to get really honest and really clear with ourselves. Like, this is why it's so easy for me to get angry so quickly. This is what I've learned from it. This is how it's benefited me in my life. Okay. But then we also want to reflect on, how does that really truly affect me? What are the long-term effects that has on me? And how does it affect others around me? And do the answers to those questions fall in line with your values and what you want your life to look like? And I would imagine for most of us, it's probably not. That's why we're here trying to learn about this. And that's where I would bring you back to steps 1 through 3, being with your anger, trying to move through it, giving your anger a job. So the third R is to respond compassionately, assertively. We can also use the next three. The three R's on the bottom are kind of subheadings to respond. So we want to use relaxation, rhythm, and ritual to respond appropriately to our anger. And remember, in order to respond appropriately, we have to properly recognize and reflect on our anger. And that's, again, like a daily process, not just only when you're angry. This is an ongoing process. So to respond appropriately, we can use the next 3 R's. To relax, we can use rhythm, and we can use ritual. So relaxation, that one's more, we can understand that one more easily. We use calming techniques like progressive muscle relaxation. That's my personal favorite. You can Google that and find that on any meditation app. Progressive muscle relaxation is literally just where you squeeze certain parts of your body. Usually, you'll have a guide, like if you do a guided meditation, they'll bring you from head to toe or from toe to head, and you squeeze the part of your body and then you let go. And maybe we can practice that just with our hands right now. If you're open and willing, just squeeze your hand, and I want you to notice the sensations that are happening in your hands. Notice your skin tightening. Notice just what it feels like to tighten those muscles. And then just slowly, gently let go of the tension. Notice what it feels like to have your muscles relax and let go. You might not even have words for it, but you might just notice the sensation. This is what it feels like to go from tension to relaxation. And we want to just get used to that. I use progressive muscle relaxation almost every single day. And thank you for sharing that. It does. Someone said in the chat, it's hard to practice because of my chronic pain. So when I invite you to squeeze, 1, maybe you don't use your hand, maybe you do a different part of your body. 2, don't squeeze so hard that it hurts. But one thing to notice, especially when you live with chronic pain, is that a lot of what we do in our daily lives is to avoid pain because we live in it so much. So then we get into this thing of like, I can't do anything that's going to touch this pain because again, I experience it so much, I don't have the capacity for that. So everything we're learning here around anger is also, I mean, a lot of our anger comes from the fact that we live in bodies with pain and our buckets are just full. Like everything could be going right in your life, but your pain levels are, filling half of that bucket. So that means as soon as things start to happen, somebody else might have an empty bucket and like 20 things could happen before they explode. But we already have a 50 to 75% full bucket and we don't have much room for error before we start to explode. So when you are practicing progressive muscle relaxation, if you do, and it's just one technique, it doesn't have to be the technique you use. You want to go just before you experience pain. So if you try it and you experience pain, that's okay, right? This is a practice. So that lets you know, oh, I went past my limits. So can I try again, but can I just go here? And maybe you just go here, like you just bring your hands halfway down. That requires some tension in your muscles. It doesn't have to be the squeeze, 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 because that can be really painful. But we also don't want to avoid our pain so much that we can't tolerate it at all. You have the skills and you have the ability to feel pain without breaking down through your support system. And so my hope is that workshops like this is just another thing that goes into your safety bucket. It's just one small part of it. And that you also get to figure out what else helps me feel safe enough to try hard things. So, another thing about like when I first started doing progressive muscle relaxation, I think I just got lucky. I found an app that I liked the guy's voice. That's something I tell my clients a lot. Like when you're trying any kind of guided meditation or progressive muscle relaxation, if you don't like the voice that you're hearing, that can be something that adds to your danger bucket. So allow that to be true for you. Like, I don't like this voice. I need to find a different one. Or maybe the person is talking too fast or too slow. So we want to find an audio recording that we just genuinely don't dislike or we really like. Someone said combining deep breathing with progressive muscle relaxation can potentially help with pain. Absolutely. And I do know that I have some clients who say that deep breathing is also really hard and painful. Again, you want to meet yourself where you're at. So when you're trying to deep breathe, I can kind of show you here, like you don't want to go and just like fill your belly all the way up. You might just go halfway. And actually, as I just did that in this example, I felt a little dizzy, right? So I recognized that. I labeled it. It was all very quick for me because I've been practicing this for so long. For you, it might be like, whoa, I just felt dizzy. Let me sit down. Let me recognize that. Let me reflect on that. And then I'm going to respond compassionately to it. So I'm not going to say, God, why does this always happen to me? Why? See, there we go again. I'm in this pain cycle, flare up thing that's happening. It's more like, okay, that happened. I'm going to ride this wave out because I know it's going to pass. I just don't know how long it's going to be before it passes. And then I'm going to recognize like, okay, so that level of breath that I just took in was too much. So next time I'm going to try to do like 50% of that. Right. So I'm already feeling better from that little dizzy spell because I responded so quickly to it. So I'm going to get back up and I'm going to say okay, breathe really slow and really small, but through my belly. And I'm going to practice this idea of deep breathing, or we can also call it diaphragmatic breathing, because the whole goal in deep breathing is to use your diaphragm, which is a muscle in your body that helps you breathe. And most of us have very weak diaphragms because we don't use it properly every day. So if the goal is to strengthen my diaphragm so that I can breathe properly and I can use breathing as a relaxation technique, then you have to take several steps back and say, okay, deep breathing isn't the thing that cures my pain or makes me feel better right now, but I have to build this skill now. Where can I go to learn more about this or to get support in this? Because again, like that's what we keep coming back to is supporting yourself through really difficult things. Visualization is another thing. Like when I first started all this work so many years ago, I wasn't the type that could visualize something in my head. If you said like, imagine a beach, with waves and sand, like I couldn't actually picture that in my head. Um, if you're an artistic type, you're probably like, how can you not picture that? You all have amazing, vivid ability to visualize things. I'm not artistic and I just don't have that ability. So I didn't have that ability, but I have built that skill up over time. So those are some of the relaxation techniques: progressive muscle relaxation, diaphragmatic breathing, visualization, and like I mentioned earlier, even sometimes scrolling on your phone. So you might even use your phone, since that is something, we all do and it all helps us numb. You might scroll on your phone a little bit while you're trying to practice progressive muscle relaxation or diaphragmatic breathing, because it brings you just out of your body enough while you're also still in it to try to do these hard things, so that it's not overwhelming and makes you shut down. Hopefully you can see like the pivotal message here is meeting yourself where you're at. It's not about doing it right or doing it all. It's about doing some of it, a little bit of it at a time, and meeting yourself where you're at. Someone that I've discovered over the years, high p- high pain that I have had, a lot of my ability to visualize has been blocked. So are you saying um you used to be able to visualize and now it's not so easy to do so? Yeah. So interesting. Yes. So again, that's like your body. When we avoid things in our body, we avoid the good things too. So that's why we're doing what we're doing here. We're not trying to go into our pain to just, suffer and just be with suffering. We're trying to go into it because when we block out the bad, we also block out the good. So again, like if you're artistic and you lost your ability to visualize because you have spent a lot of time doing everything you can to block out your pain, you're going to lose your ability to do art. And what kind of life is that? We want to be able to practice the things that bring us joy in whatever way we can. Um, my dad, he's blind and paralyzed from the waist down. He got into a motorcycle accident when I was 11, and he so he can sit in a wheelchair. It's just waist down and he can't move. And he paints. He has someone who tells him what colors he's using, and then the rest is all him. He puts the paintbrush in his hand and he has the canvas in front of him and he feels it, and he has to wait for the first layer of paint to dry. So he can only do like one layer at a time. And if you ask me, I would probably throw in the towel of like one layer of paint at a time. That means he will maybe paint the sky and then has to wait a couple days. And then he might go back in and do some trees. And then he has to go back, and wait a couple days. That is so excruciatingly slow, but that's important enough to him to deal with the frustration around that. And he also, he lives at the veterans home. So luckily he has lots of support, right? There's a lot of people who work there and their job is to support the veterans with disabilities. So he also goes to physical therapy every single day and they practice Tai Chi and movement. And yeah, it's been really, I think, pivotal for me to see my dad go through that. And then myself dealing with physical pain, like I think that was a good model for me to see, like, one, how to build patience and tolerance for really hard things. And that's important for you all to remember too. We want to find examples of people, whether it's in our real life or in books or in movies, like find examples of people you really resonate with who can help you learn how to do some of these things. If you look at someone and you're like, wow, that person just displayed a ton of patience that I don't have, you might then try to be around that person more often. Let me learn from them. And learning just comes through watching them. You don't have to ask them how they do it. They might not. If they're a naturally patient person, they're not going to be able to tell you anyway. But by your mirror neurons get turned on when you're watching them, and then that helps you learn how to internalize that over time. So look for examples. You might watch videos of someone doing progressive muscle relaxation. You might not be able to do it with them, but you might just watch those videos over and over again and see what you can learn from it rather than having an agenda of, I need to do this in this exact way. So hopefully that helps a little bit with the concept of like not being able to do things like deep breathe or progressive muscle relaxation. Another thing we can use is rhythm. So when you feel an angry outburst coming on or numbing like session, you might use something rhythmic to help you get through that. I think someone mentioned that they use mantras. And yeah, if you have a mantra that apply like that really helps you get through, let me know in the chat. Um One thing, like, I say to myself over and over again is, like, "It's okay to feel this. It's okay to feel this. It's okay to feel this." That's something and that's rhythmic, right? "It's okay to feel this. It's okay to feel this." Um, some other things would just be, like, singing, humming, clapping, stomping, tapping, tapping your desk. Sometimes you'll notice, like, right, when people tap, click their pen, it can be frustrating when you're not the person clicking your pen to hear it. But to me, that's just it's a sign, like, they're anxious and they're using rhythm to help them get through it. And then we also wanna use ritual. Yeah, I see somebody use, like, just moving the pen through your fingers. Exactly, it's a rhythm, um, and it helps you get through whatever feeling sensation is happening in your body. So we wanna pay attention to when this kind of outrage feeling is happening, we might start to hum or clap or stomp in a way that's rhythmic rather than all chaotic and all over the place. And then lastly, we wanna use ritual. So when you're going through a pain flare up, you might get your heating pad ready, you might get your water on your table next to you, you might, um, just kind of do things that are tangible. You might you might even decide to light a candle at the start of a pain flare up and blow it out at the end. You might not even have an awareness right now of what that like, how do I even know when it starts or how do I know when it's ended? It never ends. No, it doesn't typically, but we do have these things where it goes up and goes down. And the more you practice this, the more you're going to get in tune with what your pain feels like and how to know when a flare up is starting. Like when am I flaring up versus when am I just at baseline of my everyday pain, right? There's a reason we use that word flare up because there are moments where it gets worse and then it kind of gets better and comes back to baseline. So we might want to have a ritual. Again, that's could be as simple as like filling a glass of water. At the beginning of every day, I fill up a mason jar of water, try to get through 2 or 3 of them a day. And at the end of the day, again, I put the glass on my nightstand by my bed, and that is the ending of the ritual for the day. It doesn't have to be complex or complicated. It can be super, super simple. Um, it might even be like when you wake up in the morning, you have a sign on your nightstand that says like good morning. And before you go to bed, you flip it over to good night. Um, so those are just ideas and examples. Does anybody have anything that you want to add to the chat? Either relaxation techniques you use, rhythms that you like to engage with, or rituals that you like to do? And then I give you a couple minutes now. And by the way, my setting this timer with the music as I've been doing throughout the workshop, that is an example of not only rhythm, because there's music, but also ritual. There's a bell that dings. That means it's time to start. And there's a bell at the end that says, okay, let's transition out of this. Right. Comedy. Yeah, I like that one too. Music is really huge for me, working with my emotions, several rituals throughout the day to help you work through the things of the day, right? Yeah, you might, for some of you too, like you might already practice rituals that you haven't thought about it in that way before. So if that's the case, we never want to recreate or reinvent the wheel. We want to really use what's already in our environment, what already feels safe and good to us. And then maybe just the labeling of it can help you be more mindful with it and really use it more intentionally so that you're not learning like this whole new thing. But yeah, I like that someone around the chat comedy and moments of undesired emotions. Yeah. Um, and so you might use comedy. Sometimes comedy can be a thing that just completely um helps us avoid the emotion. It pushes it far away, like, oh, haha, I'm laughing about this. And so this way I can't feel my anger or anything. But sometimes when especially as we were practicing this, we can move through it with comedy. Like, I'm angry and this thing is funny. And this laughter like helps my body loosen up a little bit while I'm also still really angry. And knowing that that's okay. So kind of a healthy anger framework, if you will, is to know your anger, move your anger, give your anger a job or employ it, and soothe your anger. Um, and that is the end of this presentation. We have time now for more like questions and answers. If you want to unmute yourself, you're welcome to, or just write it in the chat. I will stay here um, for that. And I would encourage you to ask these questions like, what did you notice as you sat here today? And maybe what some of your key takeaways were. Um, and you can write it in the chat, but this is really for you. Asking these questions really is the practice. Asking a question usually, because it helps us be curious. If you ask it, now you're curious about what the answer might be. And that helps us open up. So I appreciate you all being here. And again, yeah, I'm going to kind of sit here and hang out. And if somebody has a question, feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat. And I'm going to put the music on. But if somebody wants to talk, then I'll take it off and we'll talk. You're welcome for normalizing anger. It's so important. Oh, Jen, I see your hand up. You can feel free to chat. Yeah.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Destiny. I just wanted to make sure that I understood that part about moving anger because I think I got a little bit confused in that spot. Um, maybe, yeah. But I'm thinking, I thought that like moving the anger out and doing things was good, but maybe there's a point where it's like where we shouldn't do it or something. Maybe it was like the example of cleaning, but not over cleaning or, um, I mean, these things listed on the handout, like we should be trying to, what is smashing ice cubes? Like, are we wanting to do that or do we not want to do that?
You want to do what gives you enough relief without causing pain at the end.
Okay, so the thing to watch for is not cause not causing pain in your body.
Exactly.
Okay. So
Sometimes,
that's where there was that, like, don't do this, like, if there's too much pain.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like if I'm rage cleaning my house, that might actually be a healthy way to move my body while I'm angry, but not if I do it to the point where now I'm in bed for 3 days because so fatigued and I'm in so much pain.
Okay, I think that's where I had gotten confused thinking that there was like, "Oh, don't do it." But that was just, don't do it if it's gonna be too much. But all these things, um, are okay to do. Okay.
They're all okay to do as long as, yeah, they're not causing pain.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
that's the biggest thing about like even just like workshops like this or going to therapy or like reading books, there's a lot of do's and don'ts. I think one of my main goals for all of my clients and for people who attend these workshops is it's all about listening to yourself because everyone has a different tolerance level. Listening to yourself though also means that you're pushing yourself when it feels good to do so. Not pushing yourself
Yeah.
because you feel like you're supposed to, and society says you're a terrible person if you don't.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then giving your anger a job is just moving it that much further, like you might use it to do something productive or something like that.
Yep. Again, just making sure it's not over productivity where you're then in pain or hurting.
Okay.
And
Okay.
when you're first starting this, it's hard because especially if you're really like in a lot of pain or really, really sick, the most you can do, you might only be able to get up and do one dish before you're like, if I do another dish, I'm gonna be in pain. But if I do one, I'm not. And
Yeah.
that's hard, right? Like who gets up to do one dish when there's 20 dishes in the sink? It feels like you have to do it all.
Okay. Okay.
But I would encourage you to just do the one. And then maybe you
Okay.
up in an hour and you just do another one.
Okay.
That's hard.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, I think I got confused and I was like, wait a minute. I was thinking we were doing these things, but then I see why I thought that was like, oh, don't overdo it. Okay.
Yeah.
But all of these things are good to get it out and express it um and then I think maybe the explosion that we were talking about, like when it goes too much or something, then we want to avoid that thing. Like if you find yourself like yelling or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
O-
sometimes you might need to yell, but you don't want to yell at your partner. You might go into your car and scream or something. Um, And you might feel a bit of you might so again, this is all about a reflective practice afterward. Like, okay, I did go to my car and I rage screamed and I cried and I needed to do that even though I am tired now. Like it's not about avoiding all fatigue or like never doing anything that pushes your but you want to be able to like rein it in too, it is this really is a practice because I can't tell you exactly how much to do or when to do it. Only you are going to know how to do that when you engage in the reflective practice. So you might overdo it one day, right? You were trying to do this, you were trying to do it balanced, and you overdid it. So that's where the compassion comes in of like, I overdid it. Okay. What was it about that made it overdoing for me? And
Mhm.
now I'm in a reflective practice. And that's what's going to help me do better next time, do better for myself.
Okay. And only we can tell. It's not like it's very subjective. Okay. Right. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Destiny. I appreciate it.
The 6 R's really, I I kept thinking about, my bucket gets like over full, right? And then I go into like, for instance, the rage cleaning. And so my mind rationalizes that like I'm giving my anger a job and then I civilly overdo it.
Yep.
And so I kept looking at the 6 R's and I was thinking, okay, so when it's like that for me, I need to like spend more time in the recognize and reflect and then just like go down to like relax rhythm and ritual. Like that needs to be my job until I get a better handle on, because once I start the cleaning, like I could set a timer and there's no stopping me. I'll ignore the timer, like I'm just like, oh, I'm being, because my brain goes, oh, but the feeling of the clean kitchen at the end is going to be so wonderful and has totally blocked out that I'm going to spend 3 days completely wrecked, and I'm just like so focused on, but it will feel so good to have a clean kitchen,
Yeah.
you know, and so looking at it like that, I was like, oh, like I could just like go from recognize and reflect. And then the, the relax rhythm and ritual, those become the job of the response. So I really liked that breakdown like that. That was really helpful to
I
me.
love that. Yeah, you were reflecting on this. You're like, okay, that's 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 where I like you said, you're not like, how do I make sure when the timer goes off, I stop, right? You're getting rid of the rule and you're more like, okay, I'm realizing when that timer goes off, I'm gonna keep going.
Like that's where my brain went at first. I was like, okay, so how do I make myself stop with the timer? And then like a few minutes later, I was like, you won't stop. There is no way of making you stop. You know better,
Yes.
right? Like you know better. So what else can you do? And so yeah, but my brain totally went there first, to be fair.
Yes, yes, I love that. Radical honesty with ourselves, right? Like, what is the honesty here of what's happening, right? Rather than what we want to happen. There's a letting go that has to happen. For me, going into that idea of letting go, if you struggle with letting go, that's where progressive muscle relaxation really helped me. Learning to let go of your tight muscles can help you learn how to let go of like things that you're holding on to tightly in your mind, like rigid rules. Sometimes rigid rules are what help keep us safe, but sometimes they're also what help hurt us. So again, just being honest, like, does this rule help me or hurt me?
Yeah, I actually have OCD. And so I've had to do a lot of that years and like, it's still, it never goes away. So it's still there. So I have to, it's that same sort of thing all the time.
Yeah, it sounds like you've done a lot of acceptance work.
Yeah. And sometimes I wish I could just like stop accepting, but
I'm with you
Hey,
there.
Destiny, my main takeaway for this presentation was the transformative. Uh, Instead of just having a chaotic explosion of anger when my bucket is full, um, the transformative is giving that anger a job. Why don't I use this anger energy for something, progressive or you know, transforming it from chaotic responses to productive something, doing something with that anger, that was novel to me. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. That's where it might look like too, like, okay, I'm about to blow up, so I might go rage clean instead of blowing up, right? Like, that's why there's no concrete answer here. And that can be hard if concrete answers are like things that have historically kept you really safe. Um, but usually the things that kept us really safe as a kid are the things that now hurt us as an adult in our adult relationships. So we want to, when we're thinking about letting go of rules too, and it's like, wait, why can't I let go of this? Well, because your brain, your nervous system knows that it kept you safe before, and it doesn't know now that it's actually doing more harm than good. So once we bring awareness to that, and we sit with that and we practice all of our practices, then we can slowly start to move out of that. But yeah, it takes time for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, if anyone didn't get the workbook, I think everyone I see here was in that email. I know a couple people signed up this morning, so want to make sure everyone has the workbook. And yeah, I think I forgot to put the link in for, there's like I want to do it. I would love for you all to fill out a survey of how you felt like this went so that as I keep doing these, I can improve and yeah, keep doing what's working and don't do what doesn't work. All right,
Do you
everyone.
have like a mailing list for future workshops and stuff?
Yes. So you should be on it now.
Okay, cool.
Did you get like an email this morning at 8 a.m.?
Yes.
Okay. Then yeah, you're on my email list now and you can unsubscribe at any time. But yeah, you'll get workshop reminders for the future. Does anyone have an idea for something that they might also want to learn about? I know that's always a hard question to answer.
Like, I know for me, finding like workshops and things around chronic illness has been really challenging. So when my therapist forwarded me this, we were both like, whoa. And I, of course, have a lot of friends who have chronic illness. And so, and they were like, I didn't think to post it until yesterday. And several of them were like, oh, I really love to go to that, but I can't so late, you know? And, so yeah, I mean, it's so hard to find stuff. And I think one of the things that has been really challenging, or not, I know one of the things that's been really challenging for me dealing with chronic illness and pain is the constant letting go and dealing dealing with that. So that's something maybe that I would like to see is like dealing with that. You're constantly, at least to me, it feels like I'm constantly letting go of parts of myself that I don't want to let go of.
Mhm.
And you know, like addressing that. And um because that's something that I constantly struggle with.
I had an idea too. Um, uh, you said it's, we don't ever reach a state of perfect balance, with our emotions, but we can certainly try for that balance. Addressing, and I was the one who put forward the idea that forgiveness is the opposite of anger, that, maybe addressing the opposite of anger might give somebody an anchor for um, defining their anger, you know, uh, and addressing forgiveness of yourself, forgiveness of the person you're angry at, forgiveness of the situation, might be that goal or that anchor that we strive for, even if we don't ever reach that balance of perfection.
Yeah. Forgiveness. Yeah. Forgiveness really could be like a whole workshop because it has connotations, different connotations for different people. Some people really like forgiveness is a huge thing that can be hugely beneficial. And other people are like, I don't have to forgive in order to like move on, which is also true. So there's also so much variation there. And that would be a really interesting thing to spend 90 minutes on because there's a lot to talk about there.
I
And
also really like Tori's in the chat.
correlation of chronic pain and maladaptive complaints like eating disorders. Yeah, that would be, I like 20 thoughts just went through my head because there's so much to say there. Um, yeah, how to acceptance, how to do it. Yeah. Just so you know, this whole workshop is a part of the puzzle of acceptance, right? So it's one piece, one small, small, small piece. And some of these practices help us get there. Um, but yeah, I like all of these workshops, the monthly workshops that I plan on doing is about like how do we get to acceptance, and then losing your identity. I think that goes correct me if I'm wrong, Max, but that goes hand in hand with what you were saying. Like constantly having to let go. Yeah, that was what came to my mind too, is identity. And then I want to go back to Tori's, like, what comes to mind for me, eating disorders is definitely a part of that, like the maladaptive coping skills, but also I think like the rage that we feel is also a maladaptive coping skill. We get angry at the people around us in order to deal with it, to cope with it. Um, OCD is also another example. The OCD helps like give us this anchor that helps us feel safe, even when that might be a false sense of security. But yeah, I'm you got my brain churning, and I'm gonna write this one down too.
I went to eating disorder treatment back in 2021. It was either end of 2020 or beginning of 20, I can't remember. But that was where it completely exploded my brain to learn that anger is often a secondary emotion, not the primary emotion. And my whole life, just like I've had all this anger, 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 and the idea that it was not primary emotion. I think John said it earlier about realizing that when he was so angry, it probably was unexpressed sadness, and like that just completely knocked the top of my head off, and
Yeah.
but really has moved a lot of my anger work forward to go, okay, what's underneath that? And so yeah, that was
Well, good catch, John.
Yes, yeah, it's true. Anger is a secondary emotion. The reason I don't teach it like that is because I actually think all of our emotions at some point or another can be a secondary emotion. Like sometimes anger is the justified emotion. Like that is, somebody, um, you know, I think of societal issues too. Like if somebody is being oppressed, anger is the absolute right emotion. Um, and then what we might be hiding with anger is, we might also be hiding, sorry, we might hide our anger through things like sadness or, laying in bed for days on end, that kind of depressive state. We are hiding our anger around that. So I think any emotion can be a secondary emotion. And it's when you do learn that, regardless in how you learn it, it is really mind blowing.
I absolutely agree about any of them can be secondary. I just like, but what it did is make me really look at it and go, is this really anger, or is
Yep.
it masking something else? And, or because like sometimes I can even use joy or something to mask something else,
Yep.
and so it really made me, like I said, it really catapulted the anger work forward, but it really made me look at other stuff too in that way of like, okay, is this really what I'm feeling or not?
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree with that. It's any of them can be secondary.
What I'm hearing from you is that you have learned how to ask the question. And that's really the key skill here. Did you?
I'm not good at it 100% of the time, but at least I'm asking better now,
Yeah,
It's like progress, not perfection.
absolutely. Yeah. How to interact with others. Yes. With their chronic pain, like talking to them, not sharing too much or acting positive. Yeah, absolutely. That is a really good topic too. Um, yeah. It's a journey. This stuff is not easy. There's no right or wrong answer, but hopefully, yeah, that's why I decided to do a 90-minute workshop. And that's not even enough either, right? Like there's so much to explore here. There's no handbook of here's what to do or not to do. It really is about your own personal reflections. All right.
And I think a lot of these topics too, like are important to us whether we're starting the chronic pain illness journey or we've been on it for a while. It's been like 10 years for me, and this stuff is still important to me. Just as important as it would be to somebody just starting that journey. And there's so much of it that I wish there had been a place to talk with other people really. And, it would have saved me, I think, a lot of grief and extra pain.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's true. It's true. Um, Tori said, going through disabilities in a world that doesn't accept them. Yep. Chronic illness has made me a wheelchair user and it's hard to cope in this world. Yeah. Yeah, I can talk about that for sure. Yeah. Awesome. Well, it is 11:30. I so appreciate you all being here. I actually hit record this time, so you will all get a replay. And yeah, if there's anything that comes up after this that you want to share with me, feel free to send me an email. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.